So a couple of weeks ago, Baby Audio sent me this great plugin, Smooth Operator. This is an awesome tool. It's an intelligent signal balancer, dynamic resonance suppressor, whatever you want to call it. And it's probably one of the best competitors to the super common Soothe 2 plugin that I've seen yet. So this is not going to be a normal review. We're actually just going to be showing you how to use it. So stick around for the whole video so I can show you how it works on drums, master bus, vocals, etc. Before we dive in, check the link in the description for some free resources, PDFs, and other free stuff. So I've got this little drum bass tune that I'm working on. Here's a little snippet of it. Alright, this is going to be a really quick run through of how the features of this plugin work. You've got, and I've just got this loaded up on my drums, got this threshold in the middle, which is the main control. That allows you to set the, just solo the drums, that allows you just to set the overall threshold. You've got a high shelf and a low shelf. This allows you to basically reduce the amount of dynamic suppression on either end of the spectrum, as well as two individual bands, which you can target specific frequencies. You can scroll to adjust the Q of those there. You've also got a solo button, so you can hear what you're soloing. This focus knob changes the specificity of the dynamic suppression. You'll notice if I crank it all the way up, it sounds very thin because it's targeting the very specific frequencies, whereas if I make it more general, it sounds a bit more natural, but it's not as specific to the resonances that it's using. I normally stick between 65 and 85. I found those values work well for me. Output volume control, which is good to balance if you're reducing the overall volume of your signal. You got a peak and RMS meter here if you need one. You got a sidechain input, you've got reset to default, and there's a bunch of presets as well, which is really cool. I also like these three colors you can switch between. Can be cool just if you want a different working environment, or if you want to chuck it on, say, a different bus, you can color it accordingly to know which one you're working with. Great, I'm just gonna reset this here. Let's jump into our drums, and I'll show you a bit about how I'd use this to just clean up some resonances on drums. I'm just going to bring this threshold up, and then we can listen to the drums as they are. Now, I've got a bunch of processing on here, so I've actually added my Smooth Operator device in between some compression and saturation and further EQing. Basically, we got compression, saturation, dynamic EQ / suppression, some general EQ internal balancing, and then some limiting just to tame the transient. So it's an already pretty complicated rack, but adding a little bit of this will just help clean up some of these annoying resonances in the drums. So let's listen and see the effect it has on the audio when I just bring this down. Okay, so you can hear it definitely has built-in makeup gain, so that when you go ahead and bring the threshold down right down to the bottom, it doesn't actually feel like it's getting any quieter. It's bringing up the top end of the signal to balance it out, right? So we're getting a lot of the low end quite balanced, but we're getting all that top end come through as a result. So what I like to do when I'm using it on buses and masters in particular is I like to shape these high and low shelves as well as the threshold to the actual shape of my existing spectrum. The reason I want to do this is because I don't want to drastically alter the tonal balance of my overall signal. I just want to clean it up and do some subtle processing. So let me kind of draw this into the shape of what I've got. You can use these EQ curves here as well. To kind of draw that balance in. And then I can bring the threshold down to kind of give it an even across the spectrum bit of dynamic suppression. Now, of course, that's too much. Shape it up. I'm really liking how it affects the highs here. Let's turn it off to hear what it's doing. Let's just press this baby audio button to bypass it. So I feel like it's bringing out the highs quite nicely, and it's kind of cleaning up a bit of mud in the low end of the kick drum there. And I just kind of like the general feel of it. I might bring back the threshold a bit more, increase the Q of this band here. This range here in particular is benefiting because that's quite a muddy range, around 200 to 500 hertz. Sounding way more balanced in the high end in particular. And I just like to use it in subtle ways like this. Now, of course, you don't have to just use it on buses. For example, there's a couple of elements in my drums here, a couple of layers that could benefit with some more extreme treatment. So for example, I think this shuffle layer here has a few things in the top end. So I'm gonna actually add it in here. I've just got a clean start so we can start from scratch, and we're gonna go down and just see what's going on. For example, I'm not gonna balance this out to the low end because I feel like the low end in this particular case probably needs a bit of taming since we've already got a separate kick layer. And this is adding some kind of nice general thump in the low end, which layers up quite nicely with the kick. However, I don't want too much of it. So I've already cut some out with the EQ, by the way. And now I'm just gonna tame it a bit more with the smooth operator. I'm gonna bring back the focus a bit too here. I'm also gonna use our top end EQ band to kind of find the resonances around the top end here. Scroll back to kind of give it a bit more of a broad spectrum. And let's see how that sounds bypassed. Sounds a bit cleaner in the low end, kind of gets rid of some of those annoying resonances in the top end. I really particularly like that. Maybe we'll bring this shelf down too. Bring up the threshold. And I really like that balancing effect this plugin has, so I'm going to leave it at that for now. There's also another layer, I think it's this one. That one's alright, I kind of like the high end in that one. This one though has some mid-range frequencies and this kind of high-end resonance which we can tame. So I'm actually going to leave the threshold this time and we're just going to use the Q band. If we see in the top end here, and if we solo it here, also going to bring up the focus about 80. Turn off solo, bring down the high end a bit. And just kind of maybe a bit less. That just kind of tidies it up a bit for me there. And let's listen to it bypass to see the effect it's having. Once again, just flattening out the top end a little bit more so we're getting rid of these really annoying resonances. This, when you do it to a lot of different layers with your drums, it has the added benefit of kind of making them all sound a bit more cohesive. Let's listen to our overall drum track now with the 3 instances of Smooth Operator. Great, and that's sounding a lot better to me now. So I'm really using it in a subtle way here, but it's having a nice effect when we add up all those instances. For something a bit more drastic, I'm gonna head now to my vocal, we've got this main vocal hook in this track, and I'll load up Smooth Operator here. I think I'm going to use green for this one. And let's listen to what's going on. Bring up the threshold till we hear it dry. And for the sake of processing, I'm going to turn off this this reverb and delay for a second. Now, what we can hear and see on this spectrum analyzer is a couple of resonances, one around 500 and one around 2K. This is giving it quite this like lo-fi feel, which is quite nice, and it's what I want. And one thing to remember is that you don't want to eliminate all resonances out of your sounds when using a plugin like Smooth Operator, because you will remove the character completely. So it's good to be subtle here. Now, I am going to basically just bring the threshold down until we get a bit of general resonance suppression around those two areas, just so it sounds a bit more balanced. Let's give it a go. And let's hear without it on. Going to give it a bit of a dip on the 2K one. So that's way more listenable to me, but it still maintains the character. We're just getting a little bit of gain reduction around those two ranges there, just so it sits better. And let's also listen to this in the mix and see how it sounds. It sounds a lot more natural and not as harsh to listen to, which I really, really like. Great, I'm going to leave those reverb and delay plugins off for now because I don't want them ringing out throughout the rest of this video. Another great application though for this plugin is on a music bus or a instrument bus. Instruments tend to have a lot of different resonances which give them the character and tonality that you want, but it can be good to use a little bit of resonance suppression just so that you get a bit more of a flatter mix, especially when you're mastering. Certain notes can tend to trigger the limiter or other compressors that you got on your master bus a bit more, which can add distortion in unwanted ways. So I like to use a little bit of it on the bus. Let's use blue this time. And let's see what we've got going on. I'm just going to bring up the threshold again. Go to a bit more of a dense area. Solo the music. There's a bit of low end stuff going on, which I kind of want to maintain a bit, but also suppress at the same time. So I'm going to bring the threshold down and see what action we get. So I'm going to bring up the curve upwards, and when we move it upwards, we get less suppression, which is actually what we want. So let's do that. This also has the added benefit of adding a bit more top end to the sound because we're removing some of these more harsh mid-range frequencies. I just once again want to use it in a little bit of a subtle way, so I'm going to leave it at that and not overcomplicate it. Might bring the focus down a tiny bit, just to keep that natural sound going. Great, we've used it in a lot of really cool ways. The last way I like to use Smooth Operator is, because it's such a simple plugin, is just on the master bus to once again add another such a layer of just getting rid of any extra resonances. When you're adding in drums and bass, and then you're adding in other instruments in the mid-range, particularly in the low mids, but across the whole mix, you can get a lot of annoying frequencies, specifically when certain notes or instruments are being played. So I like to just do one more subtle layer of this. Once again, we're going to use blue, and let's just see what's going on here again. make sure I unsolo the music bus. Now, once again, what I'm going to do here is shape it to the existing spectrum we've got, because I don't want to change the bass balance, because I like my bass a bit louder, especially in drum and bass. And I'm gonna, once I've got the shape I want there with the 2 Qs and the 2 shelves, I'm gonna bring up the threshold until I get a bit more of a subtle effect. If I exaggerate this, you'll hear what it sounds like. I'm gonna leave the focus around 70, kind of where it was, just because I like that good balance of specificity, but also generalization. You can see it's really cleaning up between 100 and 500K, a bit above and below that too, but it's just, yeah, really nice there. And once again, it's just providing that little bit of extra, control. Let's unsolo it. Well, let's bypass it. Should I just say? Once again, I'm going to give it a little less threshold. Amazing, and that there has just really tidied this whole mix up. Let's listen to the kind of a section of it just on its own so we can appreciate the balance of this mix now. Of course, this isn't a one plugin solves all tool. Good mixing, good EQing, good general balancing, etc. is still going to be the 90%, but this provides that extra little 1% that you'll want. There we go. I really like the sound of this mix now, this master, sounding really nice to me, and all thanks to Smooth Operator. Now, if I had to draw a quick comparison between Soothe 2 and Smooth Operator, even though I haven't really used Soothe 2 in this video at all, is that Soothe 2 is a much more, complicated, in-depth plugin. I'm a big fan of simple plugins, and that's why Smooth Operator really stood out to me. It doesn't have hundreds of controls, hundreds of ways you can control the resonances. You just kind of bring it down and it works, and you shape it to the audio you've got already, and it just does the job. I don't think it needs to be more complicated than that for these type of applications. Amazing. If you enjoyed this video and want more, make sure to first of all give this video a big thumbs up. Down below, click it now, and also subscribe if you want more content from myself, from Luca, and the rest of the EDM Prod team. I will see you guys when I'm back on the channel next. Until then, have a great week. See you later.